RPMs. Do you guys know what a 78 RPM is? We're going to do like a little technical stuff. Okay, so these, everybody knows what these are. These are vinyls. These are 33 RPMs. That means they go around 33 times, right, per minute. 78s were much smaller discs. They were about this big, and they would go 78 times a minute. They were originally made of shellac, and you would have one song on side A and one song on side B. Your grandparents probably had dozens or hundreds of these in their house. And they became obsolete in the beginning of the 1950s. But all of like Gardel's first stuff, all the classic folklore and tango, Aduapo Chupanqui, all of this stuff was recorded on 78s. This, where'd it go? This was compiled by a notable eccentric called Harry Smith, who was a filmmaker and an artist and a massive collector of records. In my opinion, it's the most formative document in creating the American folk canon. What do I mean by that? Without this compilation, which is from 1952, Bob Dylan doesn't exist as Bob Dylan. Joan Baez doesn't exist as Joan Baez. None of the Leonard Cohen, I mean, these people would still exist and maybe they'd still be making music. They would not be making the music that they made without this. They were all incredibly informed by this. And this isn't just speculation. Like, you read interviews with them and they talk about how this is the most important thing that they heard when they were younger. Next slide, Paku. Should I do like a signal or something, or just next slide? Okay, next. Okay. It says the Anthology of American Folk Music. I'm doing what I said I wasn't going to do. The Anthology of American Folk Music, a document not well known outside of North American folk circles, is the most important text for understanding how folk music was created and collected, as well as mapping out many possible futures for the genre and its forms. It is nearly impossible to overstate the importance of this monumental work in terms of songwriting, variety, and quality, research, and the incalculable influence it would have on generations of musicians throughout the world, whether or not they are conscious of it. Next. Yeah. Okay, so I think we have to understand, like, if we think about where this comes from, we have to understand the recording industry, at least in the United States. Recording technology became commercialized in the 1880s by Thomas Edison, who maybe you guys have heard of because of like the light bulb. Thomas Edison didn't invent anything himself. Thomas Edison was just, he was like the Elon Musk of his time. He just took great ideas and sold them to other people. And this is the same with, should I not say that out loud? Am I going to get, am I going to get sued for saying that out loud? This was recording too. So maybe you guys have seen some of these. These are really old instruments, but the first records weren't actually records. They were cylinders made of wax. Okay, and this is what they were Edison's wax cylinders. This is the product that he sold. He sold hundreds of thousands of these units, and you would hear songs. You would hear speeches. You could buy Teddy Roosevelt's famous speech from the Spanish-American War, the war for Cuba. Like, you could buy these at a department store and you could take them home and listen to them. The sound quality by today's standards is terrible, but for then it was like this really, really new technology. In the 1920s, the industry shifts and they start using discs, right, which are called 78s, and they're made of shellac. And they start recording more popular music. You'll hear a lot of music from the cities at this time. You'll hear something like a lot of not jazz yet because it's too early, but you'll hear classical music for sure. Joplin for sure. Yeah, pop. Exactly. Yeah. Hey, guys, please interrupt me as much as you want. I love it. You'll hear like, but it's urban music. Like, this is what the companies were recording and then selling because the recording studios were in New York, in Philadelphia, in Boston, and in places like this. So they would just get local musicians to come in. If it sold well, they would record more. If it didn't sell, they would stop recording. In 1927, there's a big shift. So before 1927, in order to record this music, you had to hand crank like the recorder. So you'd have a guy sitting there cranking it, and he had to be like, he was an amazing technician because he had to crank at the same speed for all 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And if he went slower or faster, in the recording, you would hear the recording slow down or speed up. In 1927, this changes because they become electric, the recordings. So you plug it into a wall, and it's alternating current, and it's just constant. So the recordings from 1927 on are like true. It's how the musicians actually played it. Sorry, one of the questions I should have mentioned is like, why does this collection, which is ultimately what we're talking about, why does it span only 1927 to 1932? Because in 1927, electrical recording begins, and we get the first good sounding recordings. And in 1932, you feel like the full weight of the Depression, and the recording industry basically collapses until like after World War II. You still have people recording in the 1930s and 40s, but just not much. And nobody was buying records, and it was very hard to make records because the main ingredient in records, shellac, was imported from India, and the Pacific was closed during World War II. Next slide. Okay, we said this. Early commercial recordings focused on urban artists with connections to cities. Popular singers, classical singers, and celebrities making 78s. Okay, here's a very interesting moment. There's a small label called OK Records. And in 1923, they send like a talent scout to Atlanta, Georgia. And they say, go find some talent down there. And, you know, he finds like an opera singer or something. He finds somebody else, and he's recording these people there. And there's a guy who's a furniture salesman. And he's like, hey, I'll pay you if you record my friend John Carson. I'll buy 1,000 records. I'll buy him straight up. Okay, it's a good deal. So he records this guy, John Carson. And this is the first folk music recording in the United States. John Carson just records this silly song on violin that's not very good. And he goes back to New York, this record dealer.
The family Carter?
Not the Carter family, Carson. The Carson, yeah, the Carson family. But we'll get to the Carters, probably. This guy goes back to New York, and he's got the master, and he prints his 1,000 copies of records, and he sends them on the train. The records get to Atlanta in the morning, and at night, this guy gets a telegram. He says, send me 20,000 more records, like immediately. And they sell 500,000 records in the first week. And it's like, oh, and you know, America, if we're known for anything, it's for understanding how markets work. So all of these guys who are making records, like, okay, maybe it's not opera singers, you know, maybe it's not the Scott Joplin rag, maybe it's this folk music. So all of the record labels started sending scouts to North Carolina, Virginia, Texas, Georgia, anywhere in the Appalachians or the South, and they said, we're going to find our own, you know, guys who sell 500,000 records, and they made hundreds of thousands of records during 5 years. Some of them would work, some of them wouldn't work, but they just like kept the mill rolling. Next slide. Here's some of the artists, some of the better known artists. Bull Kazi is from North Carolina. He's a banjo player. Gid Tanner and the Scale Lickers from Atlanta. An amazing string band. Reverend J.M. Gates, he was a preacher. This was something you would also hear a lot, was a lot of church music or church sermons that were recorded, and people could then take them home and listen to them in their houses. Next slide. restaurant that he played at. Now you can be in Paris and you can listen to him. And this was like the big influence on the folk generation that came after, because they didn't have to go to this guy's house to hear him. They could buy this record set and listen to him in their house. And let's go to the next slide. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit. So the Great Depression kind of causes the recording industry to stop. And all of these folks who had been making records up until this time, many of them had been making a living doing records. Maybe they'd been playing like a series of concerts. Some of these guys, Mississippi John Hurt, he started out doing, he cut side A and side B of a 78. He went back home, and a month later they called him and they said, why don't you do some more? And he ended up doing, I think, 24 sides. Mississippi John Hurt. So for about 4 or 5 years, he was making a living playing music. And when the Great Depression hit, Mississippi John Hurt is. Yeah, race record. Yeah, this is a great point. Up until very recently, we had a very complicated, we still have a very complicated relationship with race in the United States, and music recorded by black people for a primarily black audience is called race music or race records, which is a racist way of talking about music for sure. The interesting thing about this guy, Mississippi John Hurt, is nobody had ever seen a picture of him. There's a slide later on, we'll see him, and everybody thought he was white because of the way he played and the way he sang. He plays in this very clean way, and he sings in this very, he enunciates very well, and everybody assumes he was white until he's rediscovered in 1963, and he's a black farmer living in Atlanta, like living outside of Atlanta. They're like, oh, he's black. So in many cases, from 1930, 31, 32, people died or they were rediscovered by the folk generation of the 50s and 60s. These people disappeared. Some of them went back to being farmers, like this guy. Some of them died. Some of them went back to working in restaurants, just doing regular jobs. And everybody forgot about them. They were literally just forgotten. Can we go to the next slide? So this guy's not on the, he's not on the compilation. Anybody know who this guy is? This is Harry Smith. This is the guy who is responsible for the collection and preservation of all of these records. Well, I mean, he's the one who, he assembled this collection. This is his. And why don't I'm going to pass, you can just like kind of pass some of these around if you want. You guys can look at this one if you want. This collection comes with like a magazine. It was like this tall. And they used him to climb inside the airplanes that they were fixing and like repair things that normal-sized people couldn't do. This was like very lucky for him because he was getting a salary. He wasn't actually in the war, and he had like some free time when he wasn't working. So with all of the money that he was making, he would go and buy 78s. And by the time the war ends, he has bought 10,000 78s. That's 20,000 songs. He's bought 20,000 sides. Probably, by some estimates, the most important private collection ever assembled of this music. And just like as a hobbyist, he bought these for so cheap because nobody wanted them. Like, he was buying them for pennies. Like, nobody wanted them. Let's go to the next slide. So in 1952, well, let's say this about Harry Smith. Harry Smith is a filmmaker. He's an artist. a visual artist. He's a collector more than anything, and he's just a generally eccentric person. The only job that he's had in his life, the only paying job that he ever had, was working in the army for 4 years when he was 18 or 19 years old. In 1952, being completely broke, which was often the story of his life, not having any money, he contacts a record label called Folkways, and he says, I want to sell you my entire record collection because I want to make a movie. And the owner of the record label, Moses Ash, says, I don't really have a place to put all these records, but why don't we do this thing? I have a contact within the schools and the libraries of the United States. If we put together a compilation, we can sell like 5,000 copies to all the libraries, to all the schools, and this will be used like as an educational tool. So Harry Smith, being the eccentric person that he is, takes this, you know, if like one of us gets this job, maybe you drag like, you grab your folder over here on the desktop, you grab a few songs, you put it together and you press send. But he took this like very seriously and spent 2 years putting this together. He goes through all of his records, he chooses the 84 tracks that most speak to him, that kind of tell this story, in fact, and he puts them together in 3 volumes: ballads, social music, and songs. And they were, yeah, I mean, as you can see with these boxes, this is how they were originally sold. These are the original sets. This is probably from 1954, 1956. This would be volume 1 ballads. And you would buy this, and you open it up, and it comes with the 2 records, and it comes with the little fanzine type also, and you take it home, and you listen to it, and maybe you read about the artists, and you learn something about these musicians who had entirely been forgotten. They've been erased from the memory of the United States. And like, just to put this into perspective, this is 1952, talking about music in 1932. So it'd be like, imagine if the music of 2006 didn't exist for us. Like, we had no idea what, like, I don't know, like the Coldplay record. Like, Coldplay? I've never heard of Coldplay. Wait, who's Coldplay? This was the sensation. Some of these artists were best-selling artists in their time, but because of, you know, the trauma of the Depression and World War II, they've just been forgotten. Let's go to the next slide. Next one. So this is the little fanzine that comes with it. The 3 sections that the Anthology of American Folk Music is divided into. We have ballads. Who knows what a ballad is? Everybody has an idea of what a ballad is. Like, it's Michel Bublé singing a song. But that's not a ballad. Sorry, that's not a ballad. You're all wrong. I'm sorry to tell you. Anybody know what a ballad actually refers to? Nowadays, that's what a ballad is, right? It's like a romantic thing. But that's not what ballads, for hundreds of years, referred to something else. Does anybody know what they used to be?
Like somebody playing the guitar.
And doing what?
Like singing.
But singing about what?
Probably love too.
No.
Something sad, the blues, something.
Close, but no. Anybody else?
The ballads say stories.
Yes.
The ballads say stories like tango, like chamamé.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Ballads, this is right. Ballads are stories. So on this record collection, the volume 1, which is ballads, they're all going to be stories. Sometimes the stories are insane.
Yeah.
Like, they're completely crazy, but they're going to be stories.
Real stories, yeah?
Well, who knows if they're real stories? Because some of them are but oftentimes they were based on real events. Like, again, a lot of this music is from the 19th century. A lot of it was played for people who were illiterate and who couldn't read. So oftentimes these ballads would function the way a newspaper would function. It would tell a story about, oh, you know, they robbed this train a few towns over and they caught the robber and they hung him. And then his wife married another guy. And that's the song. And they sing a song about it. And then everybody remembers it and you tell it to your kids. Has anybody heard the song Stagger Lee or Stack-a Lee? That's a pretty famous American ballad that has hundreds of versions. And it's about a guy who shoots another guy and he steals his hat. And that's the ballad. And there's a million verses about that. The second volume.
What's the point to like make it remembered and pass it on to the oral tradition? Or like what's the point of them being created?
That's a great question. I think nowadays we can ask ourselves, what's the point of this? in the moment, I think it was just to entertain. Like, it was to tell the story, like, you know, the same way that people 50,000 years ago would sit around a campfire and, like, you know, at night you look at the stars and you just tell stories. I think it's the same tradition. Nowadays we can say, oh, well, the point of this was to do this and this and this. But I think in the moment, I don't know if people, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know if people thought about that.
The timpanale, the ballad, the names, the timpanale.
Oh, Tin Pan Alley. Tin Pan Alley is more like songs, isn't it?
Yeah, the Broadway.
Right. But that
the standard of the musical standard.
Mm-hmm. This is more like, that's kind of outside of my scope, because that's more like urban city music for sure. These are a bunch of guys in a building in Manhattan, like.
Yeah.
It's kind of the opposite of this. Those are people who would create music. These are people who would, in this album.
Yeah. Here.
In that album, these are people who were recreating the traditions of their town or of the region they were from. The second volume is what's called social music. So in the second volume, we have two records. The first record is mostly fiddle tunes. We call the violin fiddle in the United States.
Appalachian music.
Absolutely. Usually without words. And it's music that was for people to dance to. You would go to a somebody's house, you'd go to a barn, you'd go to a farm, and they'd on a Saturday night, everybody would get together and they would dance. You'd have musicians playing live, because that was the only way you could actually hear music. And the other record on the second volume is religious music, or church music. So this is one of them. This is
Gospel.
a lot of gospel, a lot of sermons, especially by black preachers. And you also have, we'll hear it in a little bit, something called Sacred Heart music, which is kind of the white version of gospel from the South. Do you want to go to the next slide? I think it's on ballads. Yeah, here's just like a brief description of ballads that I made. In the United States, they're often played on guitar, banjo. They tell stories of fictionalized true events. I didn't know how to say that, but
The 40s, no?
The
40s.
Well, this song is probably from 1927, 1928. Yeah. All of the music on here is from that period, from 1927 to 1932. Their stories turned into folklore through repetition. Common themes include romance. Somebody said romance. And death. I mean, that's kind of like, if you watch like any movie, listen to any song, it's either about love or death. Those are kind of the two themes, right? And this one's super interesting. The authors and composers are typically unknown because this is folk music. Who composed it? I don't know. It's probably somebody started with this idea. Somebody changed the music. Somebody added another verse. This guy played it on violin. He taught it to his cousin. And in many cases, the people who were collecting the royalties for this are the first people who recorded it. They were smart enough to say, I wrote this song. This is my song. And they signed the papers at Sanaik or Ascot, and they were collecting royalties for like 30 years ago. Next slide. Social music, disc 1 is primarily fiddle tunes. Disc 2 is church music, sermon. So could you turn the volume a little bit? This is Sacred Heart music. This is not music that is well known in Argentina. No more?
Down?
Oh,
Over or down?
no, up.
Ah, okay.
There we go. This is music. No, not my volume. The volume of music. It's impossible. This is Sacred Heart music. This is music that, especially in the South of the United States, people would get together on Sundays after church service, especially in like the non-Catholic traditions, and you would sit together in a square, and everybody would sing this. There was a collection of songs called the Sacred Heart. Everybody has their books, and in each leg of the square, you sing a different voice. So over here it's the tenors, over here it's the basses, you have the altos, and you have the sopranos. And you all sing into the center. This isn't performative music. This is music that people just sing because they like singing.
Sir, sorry, the music made me feel the Civil War.
Well, I think this music is used in a lot of like Civil War movies. Like in Cold Mountain, they use this style of music
Like
a lot.
March.
Because this music is from before the Civil War. A lot of these songs are from the 18th and 17th century, for sure.
Yes, but
For sure.
I feel that, I don't
Nice.
know why.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Next slide.
Is there any
Yes.
director or something like for this sort of choirs in a square?
Excellent question. The answer is no. This is anybody who wants to learn more about Sacred Harp music, I'd be happy to talk for hours on end about this too, because I'm very passionate about it. There's no director, there's no conductor, and it's not performative. You would never perform this for people. Everybody who goes to one of these, it's called a sing. Everybody who goes to a sing, sings in the sing. And if you go just to listen, you will end up singing, because you can't just sit there and listen. And if you don't know the music or the words, the technique that they use, it's called shape singing. So instead of like a normal staff or pentagrama, you have shapes, and the shapes tell you what the notes are. And you kind of just listen to your neighbor, and you figure out how to sing it. And the sensation of everybody singing together is like very, very powerful. For each individual song, what you do is, so it's formed in a square, right? You have the altos, the basses, the sopranos, and what else did I say? Maybe the tenors. In the middle, you have a person who is directing that song, but this changes. So first I would go, and then I would sit down, and then you would go, and then you would go, and we all just choose whatever song we want. And when you're standing in the middle, the sensation of hearing all these voices blend together is like very transcendental. Okay, and the last one is, sorry, I'm kind of rushing because I know the last one is songs. Songs are songs, right? Everybody knows what a song is. How are songs different from ballads? Well, songs don't necessarily have to make sense, do they? Probably a lot of songs that you guys listen to, you kind of look at the lyrics and you're like, what the heck? I'm like, what's going on here? Songs have like this kind of more poetic or fantastic element to them. And they don't necessarily respond to, oh, the guy who robbed the train two towns over, oh, the bank robber, oh, my cousin married. It's more fantastic things. It's things, you can invent them, right? And that's what the third disc on this collection is about. And you also have, sorry, I'm talking a lot about white music. We should also mention like black music. Blues falls into this category. Blues music, which is invented by black Americans, most of them ex-slaves in the south of the United States, in and around Mississippi and other areas.
It's true.
The influence, the Phil
It's
Holler.
very good.
Yeah.
The song, the Phil Holler.
Absolutely, the field holler, yeah. The field hollers, a lot of songs probably brought from Africa. What's interesting about this is if you listen to a lot of blues, the lyrics are all interchangeable one to the next. It really doesn't matter which one you're singing. You can take the lyrics from one and plug them into another. It's like an open source kind of thing. You can just move this one over here, move that one over here, and it's still the same song. Question, 5 minutes, okay. Next. We're gonna do it, we're gonna finish. This is Harry Smith when he was cute. You guys had the picture of him with the picture frame where he looks like a crazy old man. That's how most people remember him, but he actually was a stunning gentleman when he was younger, if 1 meter and 50 centimeters. Yeah, that's Harry Smith. Harry Smith's Radical Thinking. Let's see if we can get through it. Next slide. The Anthology of American Folk Music was the first well-curated collection of a variety of folk artists to appear as a single document. Okay? Nobody had put together a compilation of any kind before that dealt with folk music. This is the first one, and this is the best one. Smith took great pains to mix well-known artists with obscure ones. So you have the Carter family, you have Jimmy Rogers, you have well-known blues artists mixed with people who you have no information about. We know nothing about them. They recorded one record and they disappeared off the face of the earth. The sequencing of the tracks creates a dialogue between the songs. It's something like an early mixtape for those of us old enough to remember making mixtapes, where maybe you have a person that you're interested in, you say, I'm going to make a mixtape and see if they call me back on the phone. And you take a lot of care and you're like, this song, and then this song, and this was the same thing. He didn't just put everything together. It was very carefully planned. And when you listen to this record, you can hear this. The songs speak to each other. A character in one song is speaking to another character in another song. It's like almost surreal. He mixes regional, social, economic, and racial differences into this very American melting pot, because that's kind of the origin story of the United States, even though it might not always be true. We still have economic, social, and racial problems in the United States, but the idea is it is a place where anybody can live, and it doesn't matter how you were born or what color your skin is, you can do whatever you want. This is the dream, at least. And it weaves an undeniable fabric, oh, this is a great sentence, let me read this. Weaves an undeniable fabric of democracy in a moment of transition. The United States, in 1952, this is a transitional moment. We are coming out of World War II, and we are becoming the global hegemony that we are. I don't know if we still are, but, you know, we took over the world after 1952 in a cultural sense, in a military sense, and this is a document that kind of connects the past, everything that happened before, with the present and the future. Next slide. Mississippi John Hurt recorded 20 sides in 1928. We already talked about this guy, it's this guy. He returned to obscurity as a sharecropper, meaning he worked on a farm for a very low wage. He was rediscovered by Dick Spotswood, a very young record collector. And in 1963, he had a second career where he would tour around. He was like the 7-year-old guy, and he was on tour playing shows every night. And people were, he didn't understand this. He had no idea what was going on, and suddenly he'd be playing shows for 1,000 people. He had no idea what was happening. Next slide. And we get to the folk revival. Everybody knows Bob Dylan. Who's the woman next to Bob Dylan?
John Baez.
Very good. But you already knew that. You weren't allowed to.
Starting in 1952.
No, Bob Dylan moves to Greenwich Village in 1960. That's when Bob Dylan reinvents himself as Bob Dylan. Robert Zimmerman was alive in 1952. Bob Dylan is born in 1960. Next slide. This is by David Van Ronk. Dave Van Ronk was a huge influence on Bob Dylan. Dave Van Ronk taught Bob Dylan how to play guitar, taught him how to sing, told him which places to play in New York. If you've seen this Coen Brothers movie, what's the one? With the folk singer, anybody? No?
Where?
No, not Brother, Where Are You? No, one that's like more recent. Should have written it down. Anyway, it's based on the life of Dave Van Ronk. And he says, the anthology was our Bible.
Johnny Cash? No.
Not Johnny Cash.
No.
We knew every word of every song on it, including the ones we hated. They say that in 19th century British Parliament, when a member would have been to quote a classical author in Latin, the entire house would rise in a body and finish the quote along with it. It was like that, meaning everybody in this scene in Greenwich Village at the end of the 1950s and early 1960s knew every song on this album by heart, next slide. And here I just kind of wanted to connect it to some more modern things. The folk revival would not have happened without the anthology of American folk music. Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, Neil Young, David Crosby, Jerry Garcia, John Fahey, etc. In England, Shirley Collins, Fairport Convention, Pentangle. Throughout the world, cultures rethought the significance of folk music. In Latin America, we have Mercedes Sosa, Leila Valladares, Violeta Parra, and perhaps newer music, somebody like Wilco, Gustavo Santaolalla for sure is a fan of this, Juan Molina for sure, and now Gecko, sorry it says Gecko, it should be Gecko, sorry about that, autocorrect.
The picture,
Charlie Garcia.
Leda.
You don't know Leila? This is a picture of Leila, yeah.
The musicóloga.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. She was greatly inspired by this collection by a lot of other American anthropologists, John and Alan Lomax specifically. Absolutely. These guys set the template, and people, from around the world realized, oh my God, we have this amazing patrimony, and we're going to lose it because these people are dying. And thanks to people like Leila Valladares, we have this collection of music from Argentina, principally the north. Excellent. We have one more minute. I think it's done. I think we're almost done. This is the last thing. This is a great Bob Dylan quote. For those who know Bob Dylan is incredibly cryptic. So it's always very hard to understand what he means. But this says, I have to think of all this as traditional music.
Traditional music is based on hexagrams. It comes about from legends, Bibles, plagues, and it revolves around vegetables and death, whatever that means. There's nobody that's going to kill traditional music. All those songs about roses growing out of people's brains and lovers who are really geese and swans that turn into angels, they're not going to die. It's all those paranoid people who think that someone's going to come and take away their toilet paper. They are going to die. Songs like Which Side Are You On and I Love You Porgy, they are not folk music songs. They are political songs. They're already dead. Traditional music is too unreal to die. It doesn't need to be protected. Nobody's going to hurt it. And that music is the only true valid death you can feel today off a record player. Very Bob Dylan kind of quote. And I think that's the end, right? Okay. Wow, oh my God, so modern. If anybody wants, so all of this music, you can find it, but it's not on any streaming service. So this is a link to some very noble YouTuber who assembled the entire collection from different things and put it online. If anybody wants to copy that, you can. And that is, guys, that is the end of our presentation. Thanks so much to... Thanks so much to the Embassy of the United States, to the binationals who are watching from Córdoba, Tucumán, maybe not Córdoba, definitely Mendoza and Tucumán. And for those here, we can stick around. I'm going to play some songs, and maybe we can, like, if you have questions or something. I'm like actually a teacher in my real life, so if you guys have questions, I know it's hard to believe, but I would love for you to answer. So goodbye, everybody.